I can't see her online. Hello, hello, hello. And there we go, coming in live from a little bit of a cold Gaborone. That's my city right in Botswana. And this is the Happiness Tribe. As always, your host, your cheerful host, Miss Kim, joined in by my cheerful guest, Miss Judith. And we have another guest who I think she's still trying to get her passport stamped, coming all the way from Belize. I mean, that's pretty far. So there's so many borders for her to cross until she gets to Gaborone in Botswana. I hope you're well, enjoying a very happy Easter Sunday. Please tell us where you're joining us from. Are you on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and where exactly are you located in this wide world? We have such an amazing topic today. I'm sure you've always heard, if you ate today, thank a farmer. So think about it. Eating is something we don't compromise. We eat every day, 3, 4 times in a day. And we have sometimes the choice to eat what we want. And well, at least all we do is maybe get concerned about right now, there's no organic food, this supermarket does not have fruits, these vegetables are not in season. The work that goes on behind the scenes. Somebody makes sure there's food in the supermarket. Somebody works day and night. Somebody beats cold, hot weather. And boots on the ground, literally boots on the ground. How awesome is it that we have farmers within us? And that's Miss Paula for you. She's been a farmer like all her life. I think she has a green finger. Then I think I would call myself, those people that sit on the fence but love and fancy farming. That's who I am. So our other guest, I'm not going to take her voice. She'll introduce herself and tell us about resilience farming. What exactly this? What does it mean? And how would we position Africa? I also know she's very passionate about environment and sustainability. And I think we all, especially we having been born and brought up in Africa, we're all farmers in one way or the other. Our parents, in most cases, are farmers. Farming is like our way of life, it's what we do. So it's not a choice. We farm, whether it's a kitchen garden, whatever it is. But we do get involved in farming. We support farmers as well. So, Miss Judith, the mic is yours. Most welcome to the Happiness Tribe 81 podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Thank you for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and happy Easter to all our Christians on the line or on the podcast joining us this afternoon for what's going to be a very interesting conversation. The subject is resilience farming, and it's an interesting farming. And I think just from the word resilience, you can begin to imagine what is involved. What I appreciate about the subject is that it's very much related to what we were discussing last week. And last week, if you were on the podcast with us, we were talking about a campaign that's been launched in Botswana and one that involves healing Mother Earth by planting trees, to try and nurture the soil and ensure that we leave Earth the way we found it, assuming that we found it in a good state, that is. So this subject on resilience farming it's a natural progression from our conversation last week, simply because it continues to deal with taking care of Mother Earth. And whilst we have Miss Paula, who's our subject matter expert, somebody who not only has studied it, but is living it currently, she will take us through the details of what resilience farming is. But just to highlight that it's very much linked to sustainability and our desire as the Happiness Tribe to talk about everything that's going to ensure our happiness. And our happiness has to be linked with the health of Mother Earth, because we will not be able to go anywhere without Mother Earth. We have to take care of Mother Earth. And the food that we eat, we have to ensure that we're eating healthy food. And resilience farming to me suggests that it is perhaps a better form of farming, that it does speak more or addresses sustainability issues and concerns, and that it's also more humane. And Miss Paula, I'm sure, is going to help to correct or to enhance the things that I'm saying about resilience farming. But I'm very excited because it's almost, like I said earlier, it goes back to ensuring that we treat this earth with much care, so that what we get in return from Mother Earth will help us as human beings, not just with food, but also with ensuring that we address climate change issues, which currently is a big problem. So I see that Ms. Paula has joined us. Hello, Ms. Paula.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you so
So
much for your patience. Go ahead.
you you are most welcome. So I'm not sure, Miss Kim, if you want me to go ahead and introduce Miss Paula, or should I
Yes,
hand
please.
back to you? How do you,
No,
okay. All
introduce
right.
introduce Miss Paula. So lovely to see
I
you, Miss.
It's
Yes,
just,
and
it's
we're
a pleasure to be here, and it's a blessing.
yes, no, it's good to see you, Miss Paula, and the fact that I can actually see your face. I'm not switching on my camera because I'm having a bit of an internet challenge. I don't want it to interfere with the conversation. But let's see how it goes. I might just peek at you a little bit later on. So I've been, Miss Kim is insisting, I've been thinking about this today as we were preparing for Easter and celebrating the resurrection and feeling grateful for life and having another chance to live a better life as Christians. I was thinking a lot about Miss Paula and why I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I'm looking forward to this conversation for a couple of reasons. One, I know that Miss Paula has a lot of experience in this area. It's something that, as Miss Kim pointed out earlier, she does every day. She lives and breathes this subject, but also because Miss Paula is the kind of person that you can sit down with. And so far, our conversations have been online. So thank God to technology, the fact that I have that opportunity. But I so look forward to the day that I can actually curl up on a sofa or on a chair or on a blanket on the grass next to Miss Paula to listen to her many stories, because she has stories, a lot of stories. And, with those stories comes wisdom. You can tell that this is somebody who's passionate about life and about sharing and about teaching. And so, for all those reasons, I'm really looking forward to what Miss Paula is going to be sharing with us this afternoon. We met about a year ago, a little over a year ago, but I feel like I've been friends with Miss Paula for a very long time. I've learned a lot from her in the short space that we've been talking to each other. And I really greatly appreciate all the wisdom, the knowledge, and the compassion that Miss Paula has for her fellow human beings and humanity and Mother Earth. So let me stop because I can continue, go on and on. But thank you, Miss Paula, for giving us the time this afternoon. We know that you're very busy with a number of things. And so I would like for you to please introduce yourself to our audience. And maybe in your introduction, you can include a little bit about the Happiness Tribe, because Miss Kim and I haven't yet spoken about the tribe and who we are. Over to you, Miss
Oh,
Paula.
most excellent. Thank you so much, Sister Yodit. I am humbled. I am humbled by your confidence in me. I just want the audience to know I'm a hot mess. I'm like your auntie, your sister next door. I enjoy being alive. My name is Marjorie Norales. Everyone calls me Paula. That's close to me, that works with me, that knows me. Um, yeah, so I'm a part of the founding member of the Happiness Tribe. Miss Kim and I have a long working and sister relationship that goes back. And so the impetus for the Happiness Tribe was really people are going through changes in this day and age with the changes that are taking place. People are having in somewhat adverse reactions, mental, emotional challenges related to it. And so Ms. Kim was saying to me, there's such a mental health, behavioral health component going on with all these changes, and people are complaining. What can we do? And I said to her, I said, listen, create a community where we can support each other and you can focus on loving and caring about each other. And so she did. And then I went away and doing the million things that I'm doing. And I saw what was going on from a distance, and I was just so excited about it. And at some point she came back, she was like, listen, you helped me formulate this idea. Can you please come back home and help out? So I've been here ever since. This is how I met Sister Yodit. The Happiness Tribe really is about personal, professional, and financial sustainable development, right? So it's really about helping us being a tribe, a community, helping each other to grow, to evolve, whether it's personally, professionally, whether it's about wealth generation, intergenerational wealth building and maintenance, all of that is a part of this. So we take on a variety of topics that it is either in the news or it's an experience from one of the members or whatever it is that's going on that triggers our conversations. And so this is why this podcast exists. And I'm so humbled by this. So a little bit about me. I love life. I'm a farmer. I'm also a strategist. I'm a business strategist. I get a kick out of the things that I do and doing the things that I love to do. So farming for me in terms of resilience, farming for me really was something that just came upon me. It was something that I discovered in the search for my well-being, for living more holistically, for being more in alignment with the earth, with the world, with the universe. And it's really an outgrowth of search, my personal search for growth and balance. My grandmother was a farmer. My great-great-grand aunt died at 103, and all she did her entire life was farming. That's all she did. So I'm saying that to say that the essence of this farming thing was already in me. I just didn't know it. I remember even as a teenager, one of my fantasies was always to live on a farm. I'm not even sure why. I didn't know much about farming in that way, but it was just sort of in me. So I moved back to Belize a few years ago, and my mother has a 10-acre plot of land, and I found myself on the farm. So I lived on the farm for 3 years. I'm in town now because I'm taking care of my mother, and she can't really be on the farm like that now, but I still farm. I still go to the farm, and it's just something that's in me. So when we're speaking about resilience in this particular conversation, we're speaking about operating inside an ecosystem, an established natural, like they say, Mother Earth ecosystem that lives in harmony with it. So anything in terms of fertilizers, the earth provides everything that we need. The thing that we're lacking is the knowledge and perhaps in some cases the will to realign ourselves with what exists around us in order to provide us food and nutrition security. I can go on and on and on about this. You can tell that this is something that as I'm discovering and I'm exploring, I'm more than willing to share with anyone who may be walking this path, may want to walk this path, and especially with my Happiness Tribe family. I'll stop there because I know there are questions. But Ms. Kim, Sister Yodit, let's start the conversation. What would you like to discuss in terms of this? Would you like me to go a little deeper into what resilience farming is for me now?
Thank you, Miss Paula. Thank you for that very humble introduction. Miss Paula does a lot of things, but I'm sure those other conversations will come out about some of the industries that she's impacted in her life and in her professional life. Yes, I'd like for us to get into, what exactly is involved in resilience farming, but I'm tempted to ask a question about one of the comments that you made. You said that we have to be willing to build our knowledge and our will. I think knowledge I can understand. It means, we have to go and study. People build knowledge in different ways. So it's either you're studying it or you're understudying somebody who's doing it. You're basically educating yourself. I want to talk a little bit about the will, because I think in many instances that's what we lack as human beings to get ahead in a number of areas. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Miss Paula? When you say to build our will to do something, what is involved? What is it that we need to do as humans to become a little bit more sincere about our intentions?
Well, really, that's an excellent question, Sister Yodit. For me, I can only speak for myself, and I think this may resonate with others that are either listening to this podcast today or in the future. For me, the impetus for farming really came from and is an outgrowth of pursuing well-being, right? So it's personal, physical, mental, emotional resilience for me. It was and continues to be the impetus for this farming technique. Right. So in my family, we have multiple diseases, the deadly ones, they say. There's diabetes, there's hypertension, there's heart disease, there's allergy, there is asthma, breathing discrepancies. And all of these things, all of these outgrowth or these manifestations inside of my family really derives from several things. Have a little patience with me, Sister Yodit. I want to tie several things together as I answer this question. So one of the things that I was discovering was that our lifestyle, whether we choose it or not, whether we are aware that we're choosing it or not, stress, trauma, all of the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis really has a very direct impact on how our genes manifest themselves, how they express themselves, and how disease begins and is perpetuated. So because I began to realize this at some point, I can't really tell you when I began to intuit this, the first things that I realized was, wait a minute, the quality of the food that I am eating, that we are consuming, really has a direct impact on the quality of our lives, our physical well being. And so for me, that was enough of a trigger because I love being healthy. I give thanks and praises for this life that I have. And I think my personal value system says that I have the responsibility. My personal responsibility is to take advantage of these blessings by taking responsibility for them. So that was the impetus for the will to be able to seek truth, to seek well-being, seek health and wellness, mental, emotional well-being. That's what created the will for me. Now, for other people, it could be other things. But once you realize that you can impact the quality of your life and the outcome of your life by making right choices, that really should be the impetus, the trigger, the key for pushing you towards solutions, if I might say quite simply. All of this, all of the iteration of my life today, the farming, all of it is an outgrowth of wanting to be healthy, wanting to be balanced, wanting to live like my great great grandaunt who died at 103 and never got sick. She went to sleep one night, died in her sleep, and that was it. That was it. She helped to raise 4 or 5 generations of my children, my grandchildren, my siblings' children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. So, for that was the trigger for me. So, when I speak about the will, you really have to build inside of you a will for change if you're uncomfortable with your life as it is currently. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, Miss Paula. And I think also points to, the fact that we have to make these decisions sooner than later. In other words, finding ways in which to improve the health, our health, the health of our children, family members, etc., should be the reason why we get involved in these movements of returning back. Because I know that resilience farming is also tied to the way in which our grandparents and great grandparents toiled the earth and how they took care of Mother Earth whilst they were reaping, the fruits of their labor. They made sure that they could come back, and this is without introducing foreign elements. So I think for me, what I'm getting from you, Ms. Paula, is that we need to start, before we start seeing cancer spreading in our families, before we watch people suffering, and to alleviate, not alleviate, but to prevent those things from happening. And I think this story or this conversation about the will, our will and our sincerity to get things done, is a conversation that needs to be applied across many different elements of our lives. But thank you so much, Ms. Paula, for telling us what brought you to resilience farming. And it's a lot. I know it's a historical thing for you as well. Being able to live until 102, 103, and then leaving this earth in your sleep, I think is something that everybody wants, and not to suffer and be sick. So let's move right into the subject at hand. What is resilience farming?
So, another excellent question. So, the typical definition for resilience farming is really farming that prevents us using and engaging behaviors, modalities that is going to have a negative impact on the environment, on the land that we are getting our food source from. For me, I came at resilience farming really from a traditional standpoint. One of the things growing up in the West, in the industrialized North, is that I realized that I didn't want to use chemical fertilizers for my food source, because a lot of it, some of it, and I'm not here to disavow any of the developments, the scientific developments in laboratories, but for me, there was documented scientific proof that some of those things cause cancer. And so personally, because I was returning home, because the land was virgin, I didn't want to utilize any of that in order to put on my vegetables, to put on the land, anything to get into the water source. So I began to look at traditional farming modalities from my culture, from Grandma Shona, my great 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 aunt. I began to ask questions and to look at some of their methodologies that the elders and the ancestors used in order to farm. Because one of the things that I realized was they didn't clear cut and destroy the land. They worked in harmony with the land. They only used what they needed. And they were very good at putting back what they perceive as things that were necessary to be in the land. Now we understand that's biodiversity, right? To be able to get what you need from the land, but still leave it as pristine as you find it. In other words, get what you need, but don't destroy everything in the process. That's a very simple way of looking at it, but it's a very effective way of looking at it. I hope that's answering the question, Sister Yodit. So that's what resilience farming is for me, is to do no harm to the environment in order to pursue growing my own food that's nutritious and healthy for myself, my family, and everyone that partakes in those bounties.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Yes, I think it's understood what resilience farming is, but I immediately think about, how do we use soil um, without impacting it negatively, and in a way that will enable us to feed a lot of people at the same time. So I'm thinking about what happened when we decided that we need to move into a venture into commercial farming,
Well,
because
and
we
that's
needed to feed
part
a
of,
lot of.
I'm sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
So that's the immediate, I know you're going to get to that. So that's the immediate question that comes to mind, because are there farmers out there who are able to do that? What does that look like? I think we're so used to being able to walk into a grocery store and buy whatever it is that we need. that I don't know if we have the patience to wait, possibly the way, because I know there's rotational farming. I know that you farm different things together and you don't necessarily harvest large quantities of these things. So I'm trying now to see, how do we balance that? How do we balance what is resilience organic farming with the current needs of these, huge numbers of people living in urban areas? Especially, I suppose those who are still living in the rural areas perhaps can venture into farming and feed themselves, but for those of us living in the urban areas, so it's a difficult thing to comprehend. But what is currently happening in that space, Miss Paula, with resilience and organic farming? Are we making headway
Yes,
to
ma'am.
feel? Okay, great.
Yes,
Please.
we are. Yes, we are. And that's an excellent question. One of the things that we are discovering, and again, I started with will because will really is the driver for choice, the choices that we make. Now, when I lived in the industrial north, I didn't have a farm, but I loved growing things in pots. And I was in very cold weather and I still grew vegetables. I grew things in the pot in the house. I'm going someplace with this discussion. One of the things that we're discovering is that monoculture, right? Planting 50,000 acres of just corn is disruptive to the environment. The methodology that's used, how they turn over the soil, dig up everything, tear down everything, cut down the trees, that is ultimately destructive to the environment. But to your point, Sister Yodit, we do have a need for increasing our food capacity, food production capacity, and food production output, right? So how do we do that? How do we marry this concept of resilience farming, just getting what we need, with being able to feed right now 8 billion people and maybe 12 billion very shortly? What does that look like? Here's my take on this situation, and I'm not the scientist, I'm not a subject matter expert in terms of where the generalized industrial thinking is. I'm speaking about my experience as an indigenous person pursuing health and well-being through farming and other modalities. Imagine if we all decided we could have a garden, whether it's indoor or outdoor, right? And that we can commit not to anyone else, but to being healthy, to becoming healthier by producing our own stuff, right? So you may not be able to have a farm, but you can do something in pots. In an apartment, you don't even have to have a veranda or a porch or a balcony. If you do, fine. How are we utilizing this? The commitment really is a spiritual perspective. It's something that we have to really arrive at inside ourselves. But imagine if we all began to do this as we're seeking health and well-being, to figure out where we can get heirloom seeds, joining communities, joining clans, joining tribes that are already involved in this kind of thing, so that we can get the knowledge, that we can help each other learn how to provide more for ourselves, as opposed to going to a supermarket. And let me tell you something. This is not far off, Sister Yodit. The price of eggs right now is $12 for a dozen eggs in Los Angeles. Right now. In the city. Right? Bell pepper, how much did she say bell pepper was? I think she said my friend said she spent almost $8 a pound for bell pepper. You know, you can grow bell pepper in a pot in your apartment. See, so what I'm saying is that there's a culmination of circumstances that is pushing us towards going back to providing for ourselves through our food source, through whatever means that we may have, right? Back in the day when I was a teenager, there was a thing called a chia pet that you can actually grow inside, put the seeds in, water it, and then you can get some kind of, I don't remember what it was that was, I think it was some kind of, I don't remember what it was that was growing that you can actually eat. The point that I'm making is that we don't have a choice. We're moving into a position where we don't have a choice. Imagine that the most of the people on the planet are poor and we don't have a lot. to survive means that we need to be able to plant the things that we can plant so that we can eat healthier. We can have access to those things so that when the supply chain goes south, we have a level of resilience built in to our lifestyle. And we don't have a lot of choice going forward. This is going to happen anyway. So what's happening now is that shamans and indigenous people are now going back to and training people who are willing to learn about how to grow their food source. Right. To answer your question. And this movement is being incubated by these groups, even as industrialized farming is being hit by tariffs, by, we can go down the list. Can you imagine grain, 1 million ton of grain that's just sitting in a seaport off of China, just in wherever, refrigerated systems, right? How is that impacting our food source? So whether we like it or not, for those of us who see what's coming and what's unfolding, it's really critical that we begin to look at our own food source and begin to take responsibility for it. And this is going to really ultimately change the dynamic of how we produce, access, share food and nutrition, to be honest with you. And I hope that answered the question. I'm sorry, I know I went around the world, but I'm really passionate about this.
No, it's fine. Please, you must run around the world to use your words. I think it's important to bring all these different elements together and actually to paint the picture of what's currently going on. But as you were speaking, I was reminded of that during COVID, here in Botswana, we're a landlocked country and we're very dependent on food coming from across the border. But what COVID
Right.
forced us to do is it forced us to look inward and say, well, we can grow some of these food items. And it's not that it wasn't done before. It's just that we got used to having what we needed, imported. But during COVID, a lot of people took to farming. And I don't know here whether it's organic farming or not, but took to farming so that we could start producing our own things. So in other words, to your point of, it is possible to do this. We saw it happening in Botswana. And yes, there were moments where it gets frustrating because you can't find something, but where that this is the way it has to be. We have to become resilient and we have to become self-sufficient, especially with food. You definitely, what is it? What's the expression? Take the bull by the horns, and you
Yes,
continue
ma'am.
to do that. So now it's taking one step further and saying, how do we make sure that the food that we're growing, the chickens that we are rearing, are actually healthy for us? And that's it's good to know that there is a movement. I do know that one of the things that's happening a lot more here in Botswana, at least in Gaborone, is we have market days on Saturdays, and people come together in different communities selling the different things that they have. And that's possibly another way of ensuring that those of us who are not growing our own organic vegetables are able to purchase it from somebody who is. And
Absolutely.
and having these conversations to say it is possible to grow food, to use organic fertilizer. And I see somebody mentioning in the chat permaculture, which is I think it's another word that you could use for resilience farming, but it comes with its own methodology. And I know that there was an organization in Botswana that dealt exactly with that, permaculture. So I think if before we move to the comments, Ms. Kim, if maybe I could ask Ms. Paula just to give us a little bit more detail about what exactly is involved in resilience farming. I'm with you, I'm in your fields, and you are showing me and telling me what it is that you do to ensure that you're not harming earth as you're farming.
So
What is it that you're doing? Thanks.
let me give you an example of what we're doing right now. We're in the dry season, and in the dry season, we usually have a problem with pests. I mean, the bugs, the aphids, the mealybugs. During the season they eat everything up, and because we're planting vegetables, 3 months crop in between the long term crops. So at the farm, we have fruit trees, we have coconut trees, we have plantains, we have bananas, we have a variety of things on the farm. The way that we're doing it now is we're doing what we call co-planting. So we're planting the bell peppers and the onions and the tomatoes. We're co-planting those with basil. Well, why basil? Because the insects that I just mentioned, they really don't like the smell of basil. So one of the things that you can do in terms of resilience farming is use what nature already has. If you're getting all these bugs or these particular animals and they don't like this particular tree or leaf, make sure you plant in between, plant those two together, right? And we plant them in between the trees. Why? Because bell peppers and tomatoes don't like full sun. They like partial sun. They like some sunlight, but not 8, 10, 12 hours of sunlight. So we plant the vegetables in between the fruit trees, which are a good distance away, but provide enough shade that allows us, now we don't have to worry about necessarily a greenhouse in that way. We're using the topography of the land and the biodiversity of the land to plant in harmony with what already exists. We don't clear cut. We don't tear down everything. We leave lots of big trees. We leave those. One of the things with resilience farming, like I said, is really to be able to use what you already have to grow what you want in a way that's healthy and a way that prevents you from utilizing chemical fertilizers and pesticides, right? So right now, the way that it's working, instead of using a lot of water management is critical to farming. It's one of the major issues, right? So we have in-ground wells that are deep inside the ground, and we are in the process now of putting together a watering system, a water management system that deals with, first of all, it runs on solar. The water pump runs on solar. And we have a drip irrigation system so that the water drips through this entire piping system that goes through the field, whatever it is we're planting. And we do it late in the evening so that we wet everything, soaks everything for hours when it's still dark, so that by the time the sunlight comes up, the ground is damp, the plants have gotten what they need, and we are really managing the water in a way that doesn't overuse the water, the aquifer, the underground aquifer. That's one thing. The second thing is we use firewood a lot, and coconut, everything on the coconut we use the coconut huts, we burn it, we use it to cook with, we use the coconut to make oil with, to cook food with. But everything on the coconut tree, once you burn it, like you trim the coconut trees, you cut up the leaves and you burn everything. When you burn it, we take the ashes and we create pesticides with the ashes. It's pesticide milk. And in fact, I know that they're doing that in West Africa right now. They're actually, in the AES countries, they're actually looking at policy, regional policy, to really control intellectual property rights that is associated with the ancient technology that's dealing with agriculture and farming. And they're looking really at fertilizers, organic fertilizers that is readily available in the environment. So those are a few of the things that we're looking at. And those are a few of the things that we use. We use brown sugar. Brown sugar is produced in Belize from sugar cane. So we use the sugar cane, we use the potash, we use that for fertilizer, right? Like the vegetables, especially like tomatoes. Tomatoes love brown sugar water as a natural fertilizer to make it grow. So these are the things that we're saying, the things that we already have that we're producing that's not disrupting the environment, that we can apply now to our farming techniques in order to increase the yield, reduce the pest, and maintain as much biodiversity as we can. So we don't clear cut like that. We cut what we're using. If we have things like the vines and undergrowth that we cut, that's what we cut. And when we dry those and we burn them, we use the ashes and we put them back around the foot of the trees. I hope that answered the question, because, I can go on ad nauseum.
No, I love the details that you're sharing, Ms. Paula, because now you've also linked what you're doing on your farm. You're not just working with soil, you're also working with, obviously you have to work with water, but you're showing us, how you use water wisely. So you're not just, you're using techniques that now people are reaching to ensure that they use water wisely. You're harnessing the power of the sun, which is also another fantastic thing. In other words, you're showing us that it's possible to use everything that nature gives us without having to resort to artificial means of doing things, so that we are not just talking about earth's soil, excuse me, but we're also talking about how we use everything that we've been given to ensure that we farm sustainably. I think I can use that word safely, Miss Paula. Thank you so
Yes,
much
Sister
for
Yodit.
sharing all.
I'm sorry. I'd
Yes.
like to
No,
add
please go
something
ahead.
here. I'd like to add something right here because I think this is critical. One of the things that we're discovering, or let me say rediscovering, is that our ancestors understood and understood the value of Mother Nature, how perfect she is in her systems, in her system design or technology, if I may. Mother Nature has set things up in a way that is perfect. If we're paying attention, we can utilize those same systems. We can access those systems in order to build a quality of life around everything that we have, right? My daughter was asking me the other day, she was like, Mom, why are the tomato trees leaning? I said, because if you notice the way the sun comes up, it gets the most sun in the afternoon. So it's leaning towards the sun. She said, I never paid attention to that. I said, I didn't either. Until I started at the farm, I started to pay attention to why are the trees doing this? If there are too many trees that are growing together, you will notice that some trees will bend around the larger tree for it to access the sunlight. We can use those same technologies and those same concepts that our ancestors overstood and utilized in order to produce what it is that we need. And we don't need mass production of any one crop. We need to be able to produce multiple things at the same time. I'll stop there, but thank you. I appreciate the time.
No, we appreciate you and your knowledge, Miss Paula. I think, and you've said a couple of things that I think we all need to pause and think about. Are we listening to Mother Nature? Are we listening to what's happening around us? Are we paying attention? Are we actually seeing what's happening? Or are we so fixated with production, production, production? And maybe perhaps greed, because I suspect that has a lot to do with it as well, that we've stopped paying attention because it's not that far removed. I know that my parents, our parents, lived in sustainable ways. There is nothing that my mother threw away. I remember that vividly as a
Right.
child. Everything was recycled. There was purpose made for everything. And so we lost that. And like I said, greed probably has a lot to do with that, although we'd
And
like to
it's
blame the go ahead,
and
Miss Paula.
Sister Yoda, it's also it's the machine, it's the system within which we live that tells us that we need to go and sit at someone's job to get money in order to survive, when in fact, in point of fact, if we're really stopping long enough to think about the situation, the circumstance that we find ourselves in, most people in my community are leaving the towns and the villages to go to the big cities to live, to go look for a job, right? And
Right,
I'm thinking to
right,
myself, but half of your bill, your food bill, is managed right where you are if you're in the village and if you're growing. I'm not saying that growth doesn't require moving around. I'm saying for us to become resilient people, we really need to be mindful. We need to think about what it is that we believe, what it is that drives us, and does it make sense in the full spectrum of life? Does it really make sense for me to leave the village where I can grow my own food, grow my own animals, right? That cuts down on my bill, where I have perhaps a water system running through, maybe a spring or a waterway that not too far away, to go to someplace else to find somebody's job to be at somebody else's desk. And whenever the economy turns south, now I have to start all over again. I'm not knocking development as it's unfolded. What I'm saying is a new paradigm is required to make better
yeah.
choices. That's all I'm
Abs-
saying.
Absolutely. And I think and that is where we've lost it, because we go to the cities looking for this better life, this new life. And then in the process, we become sicker physically, spiritually. we start losing the strength that we came to the city with. And there will be people who argue with me on this one. I know, because sometimes where they come from in the rural areas, it's very difficult. Life is hard, and it's easier for me to get a job in the city and send money back home to my family. I understand that. And a lot of times these situations are caused by climate change. There's drought, you're unable to grow food, there aren't any jobs, you're unable to take care of your family. Therefore, the city is painted in this wonderful way, and we all believe that if we get there, life will be better. It's the same story around us as Africans, some of us having to cross overland under very difficult circumstances to get to the quote unquote developed world in order to make a better living, in order to take care of family back home. And perhaps for some people, definitely. But in those countries where there is peace and where there is Mother Nature has provided, it's just going back possibly to the way our great grandparents lived, and the simplicity of life. Perhaps that is something that we don't want anymore, and that's why we move to the cities. But the sicker we become, Miss Paula, I think now you begin to think about, is it really better for me to stay here? Is it better for me to live to a city where the air quality is terrible and I'm just going to exacerbate whatever lung issues I have? And that is perhaps what we need, as a pause. And as much as COVID caused a lot of destruction and we lost a lot of loved ones, it forced us to think about life and what it is. And those of us who were not battling for our lives, obviously. So there's a lot of what you've said that goes beyond resilience farming into other subjects that we possibly can get into as the Happiness Tribe, in podcasts that follow. But really appreciate your wisdom around this, Ms. Paula, and for connecting the dots for us, in terms of, resilience farming, living a healthy life, and I think to a certain extent pursuing happiness, because you sound like a very happy person to me, somebody who's somebody who's complete and fulfilled. I know you're still, looking for ways to improve certain things, but generally speaking, you sound like somebody who is quite content with life and what you have in front of
Sister
you right
Yodit,
now. Yes,
can I tell you one of the reasons that I moved to Belize was because I was getting sick so much. I was in the emergency room so often that I was incapacitated because I had allergy. I didn't know that allergy was a part of our family dynamic again, right? Until I was in the environment where that those DNA expressions began to increase in terms of respiratory challenges. Now, they had me on all type. I can't tell you the amount of medication that I've on. In fact, it gotten so bad, I used to have to go to the clinic to get an infusion of this medication that would reduce my allergy impact. I am now using mullein, mullen, mullein. It's a plant that now that it's getting in my system, and I know 2-3 weeks ago I was so sick I could barely speak. The mullein is in my system. It's a bark, and there's the leaves. The mullein is now in my system because now I'm making tinctures with it, and now it's in my system, and I'm not as sick. You can hear me now. Remember last week, Sister Yodit, I could barely speak. This
absolutely. I
this
remember.
simple herb that's here. Wellness is not just about the food source. It's about the plant, the flora and the fauna. There are systems put in place to take these things and turn them into pills to give them to us. But what if we can get the natural variety of them straight? Like in my yard, on the farm, we plant these herbs. Hibiscus grows everywhere. Hibiscus flower is excellent for helping to maintain high blood pressure, hypertension, right? I mean, I can go on and on and on. Mango leaves. You have mango leaves in West Africa and other parts of Africa. Mango leaves is good for hypertension, right? But there's no one, the established system is not giving us this information because it's a direct it's in direct opposition to what's established. And what I'm saying is that for health and well-being, we really need to explore what is possible. Grandmother's remedies, great grandmother's remedies are still as effective now today as they were back then. So we shouldn't just dismiss them out of hand. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I do know that there's a growing interest in those very health remedies, you know, what grandparents used. Right here in Botswana, there is a tea, and I believe there's my in-laws have it growing in their garden, and it's a tea that we used um, during COVID. You inhale the steam and you drink. It's got antiviral properties. I think that's how you
Yes,
say it. And
yes,
it's used, and you can walk into a shop and you can buy it in the form of tea bags, but it originates right here. So I hear you on that one, Miss Paula, and I believe there is a lot of documentation. Unfortunately, some of it is sitting on library shelves, but there's a growing movement to say, let's look to our own remedies right here, and it helps. It helps. I mean, we still use it the minute you start feeling fluey and you have a cold. But
yes,
thanks on the. I did not know that mango leaves serve that purpose. So maybe we need to start jotting down some of the information you're giving us. I know hibiscus also helps regulate blood sugar levels. And
yes,
so we
ma'am.
drink a lot of, yes, drink a lot of hibiscus tea. There's the rooibos tea from Southern Africa. There's a lot. I think the information is out there. It's just now going back to what we were discussing last week is how do we take this information and spread it far and wide so that people start using these natural remedies more than they do those that are coming from factories. So at this point, I think I haven't even looked at the chat properly. I just know that there was a comment about permaculture, and I got very excited. Miss Kim is going to help us bring our guest up into the studio so that we can have a conversation there as well. But before we do that, I'd like to turn to Miss Kim. Miss Kim, I don't think she introduced herself properly, except to say that she's a happy, cheerful member of the Happiness Tribe, and she's looking really beautiful as well. I like the red there, Miss Kim. Um, Miss Kim's passion lies with AI and technology. I wanted to ask Miss Kim, and I could see her nodding. So hopefully her mind was going in terms of how do we get technology involved in all of this? What is it that you're envisioning, Miss Kim, as Miss Paula is talking about resilience farming? How do we now use the power of technology to do a number of things? For me, it's the education, but I'm sure there's a lot more that we can do with it. If you can just help
Mhm.
address that one. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Miss Judith, and thank you, Miss Paula, our walking encyclopedia. I actually, as you spoke, the thing I kept on telling myself is I am so grateful we are now recording this. Because the days that I think that was the smartest thing that LinkedIn did. Because when LinkedIn we could do audio, we just jumped on audio, and sometimes we could not. Yes, it was different. We could get a lot of people in the room, but I love it that now we can go back to our YouTube. There's a lot that you've shared that I really want to learn. Especially, I think I love when we farm as we talk about resilience farming, but how like how you explained you use like literally everything from the coconut tree. How awesome is that? And then the medicinal value in the food that we're growing. I can see Dr. Gladys has been very active on the chat, and she says wellness is about the food, fauna, and floral. And we have a lot of beautiful messages. I'll leave that for Miss Riodis. I'll just do the assigned work. But I can't help it, but I explain how excited I am to see Deirdre here. Deirdre, please join us in the studio. I will send you the link. Deirdre is a farmer, a seasoned farmer. I think Deirdre is based in New Zealand, if my memory serves me right. And when I think for us, growing up in Africa, it's not a choice. We're all farmers. We farm because our parents are farmers. We have, I think it's sort of maybe safe to say we're all passionate about farming. And for me, having been raised in Kenya, it's sort of not acceptable to buy vegetables. So to date, it's something that I've maintained. There has to be some spinach that's growing. We struggle getting coriander because coriander is not very common in Botswana. So that's a vegetable that I always have to grow. It's a herb, I think. And chilies, which just grow, they're so easy to grow. Um, I've really struggled with potatoes. To an extent, I consulted because we've had a shortage of potatoes in Botswana. Literally, where I come from, where we eat a lot of potatoes. So if there are no potatoes in the house, there's no food. So I just don't like it when I have to run around the city looking for vegetables that I can grow. So back to what you've both alluded to, that the economic realities, when there's scarcity, we are forced to get back and reinvent ourselves. My dogs were so quiet until now. Why now?
But it's okay. We're all used to them, Miss Kim. They're part of your environment, so it's all good. Please continue.
They're part of the family. Okay. If they make so much noise again, I'll just get Deirdre to carry on. But let me go straight on technology, which quite excites me. There's a lot we're doing with farming and technology, integrating tech into farming. And currently, I would call it sort of a movement that's going on. We've struggled over the years to get our youth into farming, so to speak, Gen Z and even millennials. But then when you package farming in a fancy, funky way, they get into the room. We now have a lot of Gen Zs that are farming, which it just excites me. And also, I mean, not to underestimate our parents, our the older generation, which was so brilliant to date. I can never explain how they know how to predict the weather. It doesn't matter. They will beat any AI tool. They will beat any technology. You ask them, I don't know. They look at the sky. They'll tell you when it's going to rain, and they're 100% right. The other day, I found, Miss Paula, you can add on my conversation. I am sure you're agreeing to that. The other day, I found myself questioning when we say AI is going to beat humans, and what exactly, when we say artificial intelligence is more intelligent than humans, what are you trying to say to my very old uncle who's always farmed bees and those bees can never sting him? What intelligence is that? He does not know technology. He's not using anything advanced. He's a big honey farmer. So how does he communicate with these bees that they don't sting him? You try to go to his bees, they're gonna sting you. Miss Wala, what do you say to
I
that?
but
I'm getting
I would argue with you. I would say, because you said he doesn't have any advanced technology, here's a pushback. What if the technology really is his communication, his consciousness communication with the bees? What if he has something and he's tuned into something, a frequency that the bees recognize that makes them not sting him? Because our ancestors had this capacity. So when we think of technology, Miss Kim, we often think of external technology, but we rarely think of the innate internal technology. So I'm arguing that there's something to be said about that. And it was something that they knew that we need to get back to. That's all. Thank you.
You're so
And the
right.
question,
Honestly,
and Miss Kim, I just
sorry.
want to jump in there. I'm so sorry to interrupt the two of you because it's such a wonderful thing to listen to, but I've never thought about that before, as in innate technology, to Miss Paula's point. But my worry is I don't know if we have it. Maybe our children, the Gen Zs, I don't know, but they're so fixated with AI. Do we? Because I'm not sure that we have what our forefathers and foremothers had, which
Yes,
is
we
that
do.
very deep connection with Earth. I don't know if we do, Miss Paula, and if we
We
don't,
do. We
we
do,
do.
Sister Jodith. It's just latent. It's like a muscle that you have that you don't use. It atrophies. But the minute you start engaging that muscle, trust and believe it will grit, it'll get, and it'll grow stronger. I know because I'm seeing things that's happening. I'm hearing young people say things and behaving in ways that I thought I probably would never see again, that I saw in my grandmother's generation. And I'm seeing things that I'm like, it's got to be something else that's going on beyond what the eyes, our physical eyes, can recognize, because I'm seeing and I'm hearing them speak and doing things. But I know that we have it because I'm old as dirt. And for me to be for me to
You are
be
not
here,
that old, Miss Paula. But
like over 10,000 years old, I am ancient. And for me to be accessing, I told you I didn't know anything about farming. This was as soon as I got to the farm, and I've always had a thing about growing things. But the minute I really started putting my hand in the dirt, I would literally hear voices in my head, you shouldn't plant that there. It won't do good there because of A, B, and C. Now, how do you explain that?
yeah,
So
they say once in a while it's important for you to go to stand in the grass, your bare feet, so that you can ground yourself. And maybe that's where it starts. But I'm very curious about that. And I think perhaps it's something that we need to do for those of us who are hopelessly urbanized, to say, how do I'd love to have those instincts. And I think some of it is there because I'm a mother. Anything that has to do with protecting my children, my instincts kick in. But I'd love to be able to do that with other things as well. So I do apologize for interrupting, though. I could not resist. I just found that amazing. And Miss Kim, to your uncle, maybe this is the reason we need to make that trip to visit people, because these are people who are amazing and we need to learn from them, whatever it is that we can. Back to you, Miss Kim,
Absolutely.
and then we can continue on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's, I don't know to call it wisdom or some intelligence, which is so profound. And I've seen it with farmers in Zanzibar, where they grow seaweed. They farm in the sea, and then there are sections that they also grow rice. And just how they predict, I mean, honestly, it's out of this world. It's mind-boggling when you look at what they do. You try even to do the fish farming, you're gonna get drowned the next minute. But they know they don't have any technology they use. This is a sea that will kill you, that will do anything to humans. But then they know they know when the fish come, they know specific places where to fish. I mean, so let me just stick to my lane, explaining on technology. And when we talk about Isola, we need to have another conversation after this. I think there's so much that it's truly underestimated when you think about the wisdom that sits right there. Now, talking about tech is great, and there's so much. We've seen it. We've seen how we're able to advance and progress when we include technology into farming. I have one friend of mine called Natalie, based in Cape Town. She's American. She's been sort of my coach on a lot to do with fundraising and tech. She's very tech. And she's new in Africa. I think she's been there like for 4 or 5 years. And guess what she did? She got so straight into farming. So she supports farmers across the continent with virtual reality. Think about that. Just based in Cape Town, she'll be doing a lot of projects in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Kenya. And this is so remote. So how great is that? And that's one thing that I get to really appreciate tech in farming. So there's also the use of mobile apps. I think we have about 3 major companies within the continent that have created mobile apps that help farmers predict weather, package their products, and check on where to farm. Sorry, not where to take your product to the market. One of the things I've seen as a major challenge in Africa is there's plenty of rainfall and the land is very fertile. So we farm, and a lot of places food just grows. I saw it, it's astonishing. I saw like in Tanzania, I think we have very few countries that we still struggle with food. But food, literally, in a lot of places within the continent, it's fertile land, it's still organic. We don't need to put fertilizer. Of course, commercial farmers have now brought in that. But a lot of us, we're still very resistant because it's not necessary. We still have food that just grows. And what I saw that was quite astonishing is the farming that we do, we have a lot of wastage within our farming because we're going to produce so much that we don't know how to prep it for the market. We don't know how to preserve it. And we also don't know how to export it abroad. So now with the use of technology, we've been able to work on preservation of that food, obviously cold rooms, and most important, looking for markets online. So now we have a lot of e-commerce interventions that governments have introduced within different parts of the continent, where you're able, even before you start growing your tomatoes, your cabbage, your plums, anything, you first secure the market. You agree with a particular farmer who could be in Japan. I'm going to farm sugarcane for you. You need 10 tons of sugarcane, and this is the model you want. This is the how sweet it should be, your sugarcane. This is the packaging, and place your order, and you're going to get it after 1 or 2 years, whatever it could be. It could be coffee, it could be cocoa, it could be anything. So that has really, really resolved a lot of our farming issues. Now, when you talk about AI has greatly assisted in farming, obviously packaging it with tech. But right now we have chatbots. We have chatbots that are farmers can talk to. You can put it on, you can speak to it in your mother tongue, and it gives you some farming advice that you need so much. I grew up in where I come from, our village. We have a lot of milk. We have a lot of cattle farmers. And we got to a point where we actually used to give our dogs milk. It's even sad to note to say that. Yes, because milk was plenty, and we can't process it. We didn't have the mechanism or the tools to process it. Now we've been able to process it into cheese and many other milk products, preserve it, and scale up the market for milk, and so many other byproducts that you still get even just from cows. Biogas. Biogas is one of the products that we get from just farming cows, which now that becomes fuel. And the whole ecosystem gets to be managed extremely well. Then, of course, we have solar, which has been able to reduce dependency on rainfall and greenhouses. That has been quite amazing. I think Kenya is one of the biggest exporters of roses. We farm roses. We farm roses in thousands and thousands of acres. And I've been very much involved in shipping greenhouse, the film, which we used to get from Iran, and then we would supply it to farmers in Kenya. So you're not bothered with what weather it is. You're gonna still we do a lot of horticulture, we do a lot of roses, we do fruits. We actually now doing plums. I think we're also doing dates in some areas in Kenya. And we're very, very big on things like tomatoes. Then, of course, we're looking at drones, which is a field that excites me considering I teach kids how to use these tools. So we're doing a lot of drones farming, including planting of seeds for trees using drones. Because we're very particular about deforestation that goes on in specific places. So with drones, we're able to monitor our crops, their health. We're able to map some farms and identify pest outbreaks, because that's one of the things that really messes up our farming. So this is obviously used by a lot of cooperatives, which I hope that can be a topic for another day. We have what we call cooperative circles, and I actually belong to one that we formed in South Africa. So cooperative circles is where farmers come together and they sort of, you join like 100 farmers. Most of us Kenyans were products of cooperative circles. That's how our parents were able to pay school fees. So they'll get together, do their coffee farming, set up a factory, prep the product, and then they're able to export a ready product. So that comes as a result of coming together. So you come together, you grow together, you can contribute to your farm produce. It can be financial, it can be your farm. Bring your farm, then we can farm within your farm. Yeah. So obviously, market access has been a big thing that technology has enabled that. And reducing exploitation and boosting the income, because we have a lot of farmers that work day and night, but they still don't have any financial income, which they need to support their initiatives. Climate insurance, we've seen it with the risk we've gone through. The risk can be quite significant when you're talking about climate change. Suddenly, we never know when it's going to rain, when it's going to shine, but with tech tools, we're able to mitigate a little bit of that. So my big take is, if we can blend in, we still use the wisdom within our farmers. Sorry, I'll need you to mute, and I'm trying to mute you. Yes. So if we can blend in what tech offers and we listen, because tools won't do until we do. We listen and blend in, and much more training the young farmers, training the young farmers. I think we can be able to sort out food security within the continent. Thank you, Ms. Judith.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Appreciate that very detailed description of what technology can do for us. And I think what we need to continue to ask of those of you who are involved in technology and who use AI is, how do we make it work for us to go back to organic farming so that we continue to feed the millions of people, but do it in a way that is sustainable, and we no longer have to worry about damaging Mother Earth as we're doing so. But I think I like how, and you've been very consistent with this message, package things for young people in a fun way, and they will want to get involved as well. Make it interesting. And I believe there are a couple of young people that I know right here in Botswana who ventured into farming, and one is an AI person like yourself. And yeah, I started remembering some of the conversations, but let's see if you'll be available to have a conversation with us one of these days. Thank you so much, Miss Kim. I think, let me go to the chat. I've neglected it this afternoon, so please do forgive me for that. I think I see Deirdre joined us and then has left. Oh, there you are. You're still there. Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Just give me a couple of minutes to greet everybody else who's with us today. I see Dr. Gladys. Thank you, Dr. Gladys, for all your comments. Dr. Gladys is a member of the Happiness Tribe. She's one of the founding members. Then we also have Chietza. Hi, Chietza. Nice to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We also have Dr. Marcia. Blessed Sunday to you, Dr. Marcia. Thank you for making time for us today. Okay, so I'm going to turn to Deirdre. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And Miss Kim says that you are from, did you say New Zealand?
Well, originally I'm from Northern Ireland, but I'm living in New Zealand now. Yep.
Okay. All right, wonderful. And just from some of the comments that you've made, I can see that you are probably yourself a farmer, and you understand and practice permaculture, which is resilience farming, I think named differently. But I also see from one of your comments that you must be a historian, or appreciate and understand how history has impacted us, and the way we behave when it comes to Mother Earth. So let me just get right down to it. Can you please tell us what it is that you do, and maybe share with us your experience with resilience farming?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of different bits and pieces, but the reason that I was so excited, like, because it's 3 a.m. in the morning here in New Zealand, but this is so vitally important what you're talking about, because everything is spot on. And for us to survive as a species going forward, I think it's important to look at what's happened in the past, how it's impacting our decisions and choices now, and what we can do to move forward with it. And so, like, in the past, we had, right across the world, we've had instances of colonization, we've had instances of women being separated from their feminine self. So you had the witch hunts and things like that. That has had a quite dramatic and traumatic impact on a lot of women's, particularly, ability to stay connected with the land. Now, our friends who were speaking earlier on, who had grandmothers who were still on their own farms, were great. Like, my people got moved off their farms in the 14th century, and so it's taken us quite a long time to kind of get back to understanding that. But what was mentioned earlier on about AI and stuff is interesting, but we have our own built-in AI that we can tune into, and that can tell us what we need to plant, where we need to plant it. And everybody, every living being on the planet has got this, because even cows know if you leave a cow, if a cow's sick and you leave them in the paddock, and if there's different flowers and herbs in the paddock, the cow will know which things it needs to eat if it's got an option to, and they will self-medicate themselves. Right? And animals know that, and we know it. But because of, what our species has chosen to do to each other, we've disconnected from that knowledge, and we've also lost a safe connection to what I would call spiritual, but different people will call it different things. But it's the way I look at it is that there is, this energy grid that wraps around the world in the same way that we know, that there's electricity available, and if we plug something to a socket, we expect there to be electricity. And it's the same for us spiritually. If we plug in, and I'm not, talking about religion here. I'm talking about the energy, the life force that runs through everything. That if you go out, what we were talking about earlier on, and walking bare feet, grounding yourself, but that's because the electrons and the endorphins that are released help us. Like if we're gardening, we will experience those things. Sorry, I'm getting so excited because there's so many things, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm not as coherent as I would like to be. But the be all and end all is we've had a big trauma. We're now at a stage where we have a make or break decision for us as a species of how we move forward. And if we're going to move forward in a way that's sustainable and that we can afford to do, and that is not going to destroy the planet, then we need to be able to feed ourselves, because the big monocultures are destroying the soil, and it takes so much longer for the soil to grow. Like in the Middle Ages, they used to have a rotation all the time of crops, so you would have, maybe carrots in one year, and then the next year you'd have leeks, and then the next year you'd have something else, and then they would leave the soil to rest for a year, and that was how they used to always do it. And if people were building a house, they would build X number of trees for the house that they were going to build, or they would, if they had a baby, they would plant however many trees that baby was estimated to use in that lifetime. And so those kind of things kept us connected to nature, which is what is our intrinsic right. It's all there, but the thing is, we have to, if we only rely on AI, if we only rely on that, then we're working in the machine to pay for the electronics, to pay for those other things, rather than trusting our gut. And I think particularly for women, trusting our gut's really important. Like a part of the reason why like so many people get like stomach problems and everything is because they're disconnecting from that. So some work in that area can really help connect you to the land, and a lot of the stuff that can be produced, families, individuals can start small. The permaculture design books that I put in the chat are really useful because they'll give you small little things at every single stage, from your front door, just that size, the size of a pot, right through to acres and acres of things. So there you go. Sorry, I've gone way off, but thank you for your patience, and thank you so much for having this conversation, because this is so desperately needed for our species. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. And to think it's 3 a.m. We really, really appreciate that you've made time for us this afternoon and to join the conversation. And it sounds to me like you and Miss Paula have a lot in common. Just the work.
I'm soaking up every word, because I'm like, oh yes, yes. You can tell, because I've just been going
Yes,
completely mad on. But the thing is, when the beautiful Miss Kim mentioned me later on, I couldn't press any buttons to say it because I was doing the whole thing on my phone and trying to set it up. Because when I went from one page to the other on the phone, because I just came
right.
into my studio so I wouldn't wake the entire house. But so that's, I wasn't ignoring you, darling. But I'm so glad to hear you, because what you're saying fills my heart so much. because it is so important. Like, I cannot stress how important this is, because if we can get people connected to their own sense of authenticity, connected to their own knowing, and connected to their own front doorstep and their own garden, even if it's just, if they, and working with their local city councils, because if we could get people to plant fruit trees in local cities, right? You help with the homelessness, you help with feeding people who haven't got any money. You also keep the temperature down because the canopy from the trees lowers the temperature. So especially if you have them beside roads and the tarmac, it lowers. So it helps with all sunburns and things like that. And also in the case of flooding, a tree canopy acts like a big, massive sponge which catches loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of water and very slowly brings it down and slowly redistributes it out through not only its own root system but other root systems as well. So it really helps protect it from natural disasters. And you can even, in permaculture, you can even design your planting, your extended plant, because with permaculture it's all in different zones. So you start off with the start of the zone is you, and then your immediate environment, zone 1, and then the next step out, and so forth and so forth, until you get out to about zone 6 or 7, which is like the trees at the far end of your garden, at the far end of your property. But if you were in an area that was prone to forest fires and stuff like that, you can plant like oak trees or longer, older, more slow burning woods. So that you can actually design to stop the spread of fire. If you, ironically, you can actually end up having those trees help you stop the spread of fire. Those trees can also help you stop the spread of waterborne diseases, because it actually manages and cleans the water that it catches and brings it. So they work on. Honestly, trees are the most miraculous things going. But I digress. There you go. Over to you.
Thank you, Deirdre. Actually, you don't digress. It's interesting how you've brought back the conversations that we were having last week. Last week, we had a guest joining us she's launched a campaign to plant trees all over Botswana. It's a 1 million tree campaign. And so we were talking about exactly how trees benefit our environment and why all of us need to get involved in that. And we went into the details. So I
Yes.
really appreciate you bringing us back, reminding us of that. But it's connected. It's all built into this conversation, and I think there will be a couple of other conversations following this, because, like you said, it's something that is extremely important. We need to ensure that we all understand and appreciate it, especially the young ones, so that they can move forward. But I also love how you brought in the historical context, reminding us, what has happened. Why is it that we became disconnected, and why did we forget
Mm.
momentarily that Mother Earth is important, and we need, as much as we're taking, we need to give back. I love, and it goes to Ms. Paula's point, where I was wondering whether or not we still have it in us to say that, yes, it's there. We just need to find a way to bring it back out. So I love the direction this conversation is going. I really appreciate that you've made time for us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Well, for you, it's early morning. And we've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to go back to Ms. Paula. And same question I asked Sella last week with her tree planting campaign, and this one is a bit bigger in terms of resilience farming and how we would like everybody to embrace it. Um, if you had an audience full of young people, the Gen Zs as they call them, but even those of us who are older, who've now alienated ourselves from the organic way of doing things, what would your message be to us? Ms. Paula?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, that's an excellent question. Here's what I would say. I would say to them that we are handing you the reins. We are handing you the stewardship. What is your tenure going to look like? What are your children and your grandchildren going to say to you or ask you in terms of what your behavior was, or how did your behavior have an impact on keeping, maintaining, increasing the healthiness of the environment, right? I would start with that conversation for them. Why? Because we each have a responsibility for how we interact with and how we maintain and how we steward the environment that's been blessed to us. This is not a given. With climate change now, we're seeing that our behavior is having and has had a direct impact on our quality of life because of how we've managed the environment. The second thing I would say to them is, listen, we have this knowledge. Some of us are going to die with this knowledge. We need some of you to be interested enough. If you're going to take on this mantle, take on this responsibility, here are some of the tools that are available to you to be able to not just maintain, but to increase the health and the well-being of the environment within which you live, do business, work, all of it. It isn't just farming. It is everything that we do. Every piece of banana that you eat, every skin of a fruit, every onion that you peel, all of those leaves can go back into a container to make some more soil. We're on a planet that's finite. We're not going to get any more land, not that we're aware of. And our health and well-being, our life is dependent on a healthy environment. So what are you individually going to do to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the challenge? That would be the kind of conversation I would be having with them. And I would be more than happy to share whatever limited knowledge that I have and to steer them towards the elders that are now rapidly leaving this planet, who are dying with information and technology in their heads that we were not going to be able to get back like that immediately. I hope that answers the question. And I'm waiting for a follow-up question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Absolutely, it does. It's unlimited knowledge that you have, or abundance of knowledge, and the wisdom and the challenge. And I hear you on the, what is it that we need to learn and get from our elders before they go? They are going. And there's a lot of wisdom that they have in their head. A lot of it is not written down. Some of it has been. But for those who are listening, hopefully some young ones have joined us this afternoon. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think some of it is very exciting, but we need to get started on that. Thank you, Ms. Paula. I really appreciate your words. We have a couple of minutes left. I'd love to hear, if Deirdre is still on the line with us, just a couple of comments from you since you've joined us, to say, what would your challenge be to the young ones and to those of us who have abandoned our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth?
Okay. I think I would say, first of all, take some time, go and sit either by the river or by the beach or under a tree, sit with your back against the tree, spend some time there and just breathe first. Even if you just do a simple box breathing, breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and repeat that 4 times, gives you a box. But it just, because it's important to get back into yourself so that you can still yourself enough to listen, and then it will come to you. And I know it sounds weird, but I have seen, honestly, once you start spending time in gardens and listen to this stuff, you start seeing miracles every day, because it's actually really miraculous if you spend enough time in a garden and you see the way the trees move, the way the bees move around and how they feed the flowers and stuff. And if young people could take a wee bit of time and spend some time there, and then go out and plant something, or grow something or tend something, because that'll help heal stuff inside us. So, for people who've had complex trauma or intergenerational trauma, going into the earth, putting your hands in the soil, getting that good stuff, getting those hormones, or those serotonin and dopamine, everything going that happens when you start gardening, will give you a rush of happy hormone. So that'll get, again, and if you're happy, that vibration of happiness starts moving out from you, that starts healing the world, that starts healing the people around you. You'll be happier, and those other things will kind of grow. And and plant as many trees as you can, of as many varieties as you can, wherever you can. And if you've got access to soil, or you've got access to people, or people who've got land, ask them to plant trees or allow their stuff to rewild. Lawn liberation is a really catchy phrase, but it's really important to not be spending time cutting grasses and doing all those kind of superficial things. It's much better to have it wild, because that gives the food. And it's really, really important to remember this, because we're losing species because there aren't the canopies of different living things for different species to migrate around. So the more things that you can do around that, and I think permaculture, personally, you can do a 1 week intensive permaculture course somewhere. There's ones online as well. If I've got several qualifications, but my 1 week permaculture course, which I did like 15 years ago, is the single most useful piece of education that I've ever learned in my life. Because I didn't, we were completely disconnected from gardening, and it really helped. So I would say to young people, if you can, try with that, because that'll give you a system. So if you're in an office, don't beat yourself up for being disconnected. Don't. But you can start by growing some chives or some radishes in your office. You can start then having some wee things growing in your home, and just be gentle, but be consistent and keep going with it, and do it now. Do it, and don't give me any excuses. Do it now. There isn't time. We have to heal it all.
Thank you
Yes,
so much,
ma'am.
Deirdre. Really appreciate that. And I think you said you've dropped the links to the courses online.
I've,
I
I've
can't
put
see.
in I've mentioned one permaculture book by Rosemary
Oh,
Morrow, and she's gone around and done. There's another guy, Darren Doherty, who he runs permaculture courses in Australia. There's lots of different people who've done permaculture, who've got different things around, and I'll look up some other books and put them online for you as well. It's probably best to find out who's doing it in your local area, and there's resources on it. And if anybody gets stuck, message me, and I'll find somebody in your area.
thank you so much, Deirdre. And please do look for us, the Happiness Tribe. We do have, obviously, we're on LinkedIn, but we also have a YouTube channel as well. So we're hoping that you'll join the other conversations to come. Thank you so much for your time. Before I give it back to Ms. Kim, I'd like to say hello to Selassie, who's just joined us as well, or you've joined us and you've now said hello. Hi, Selassie. Thank you for joining us. I know you've had a busy Easter. Selassie is one of our members. He's a member of the Happiness Tribe, and concerned with young people especially. I'd like to also say hello to Jay and to Homolemo for joining us. Thank you so much. It is now 5:34, and it's time for us to bring this conversation to a close. It's been such a pleasure. I feel like we've just started the conversation. So many important details have been shared this afternoon, and I think the most important one is we need to come back and find ourselves, look within us, and look for that muscle that's now, I'm not sure what the right word is, but it's not serving any purpose for many of us currently. So Ms. Paula has reassured us that it's there, and we just need to find it and bring it back to life. And that is the muscle that deals with or helps us address sustainability, and to make sure that we're caring for Mother Earth as we're using Mother Earth. There is only one Earth. We have children that we'd like to leave this earth with, and hopefully try to alleviate some of the challenges that we've created for them, specifically around climate change. So it's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue, but something that's related but a little bit different. Next week, we will let everybody know what it is that we're going to be talking about. So for me, I'm sitting in Gaborone, Botswana. It's been a real pleasure. Miss Kim, I'm handing back over to you, as is our custom, for you to close our conversation this afternoon. Thank you to all the people who've made time to join us today. And enjoy the rest of your day. If it's morning, enjoy the rest of the day and happy Easter. If it's evening, have a good evening. And to those of you who are still waking up, thank you for making time. Miss Kim, back to you.
Thank you so much, Miss Judith. This has been quite a pleasure. I'm actually, I just feel like you've ignited the activism in me.
Yeah.
It's, you sort of, those things that you know until somebody comes and reminds you, and you just go like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Why did we stop? When did the rain start beating us? And then we assumed the coast is clear, because I think COVID was a wake-up call on each one of us must have a kitchen garden. I remember during COVID, I think soon after COVID, there's a time I drove around the city looking for onions, spring onions. And I said, never again. My mom must be turning from her grave. My child that I raised,
Yeah.
driving around the city, looking for spring onions. Actually, at that point, I decided it's either my garden or my dogs. One of us has to leave. Dogs is
Miss
either a
Kim,
lunch. Because obviously, sometimes we can sing and sing that, oh, yes, it's true. Animals really mess our gardens. I've always kept a garden, but and listen to them. They're telling me not to talk about them.
I think you muted yourself, Miss Kim.
Yes, because they're telling me not to talk about them. Come on,
Just
Ginger, shut up.
leave the
Sorry.
dogs.
So you see, here's the thing. My humble request, we need part two of this. We do need part two of this. We need to make sure we carry on with the campaign that each one of us, every home, every family must have a kitchen garden. And some things that we assume it's common knowledge, people know how to. There are people who don't know. I take pride in growing up in a farm, but I didn't know that we can plant fruit trees on containers until Miss Yodit gifted us 50 fruit trees, which I adore. Like in the next 1 year, I might have purples just coming from my trees. How amazing is that? How awesome is that? So they give me a shade, they give me a healthy environment, and they might even give me more. So Mother Earth has been so generous, but Mother Earth is also looking at us like, hey, no, I need you to feed me. I need you to take me more serious. I need you to be more gentle. So there's a lot of recycling that we can do. We can grow them within. I mean, when my dogs started to terrorize my garden, I decided to do my container garden. You come to my house, what you're gonna see in my lounge will be spinach. And it looks like it's a flower. So little spaces that I have, I put my vegetables. My kitchen is full of herbs. And they just give me the good feel, they make me happy, and they also give me food that's much needed. So let's choose freshness, which we get from that. Let's choose self-reliance. The prices for food is skyrocketing. We can feed our families with love, and it has so much pride when you pluck that spinach from your garden. It feels so nice. You know how you grew it. You're not worried if it grew from a sewage thing or whatever it came, what the farmer put in it. This is you. This is your virgin land that you planted that. So let's return to the soil. I saw Deirdre said something so beautiful, which was actually very hilarious in my world, which I'm a little bit of, yeah. She says we actually get a dose of dopamine and serotonin from having our hearts in the soil. So literally, gardening makes us happy. Truly, it does make us happy. It's my go-to whenever I'm feeling like the world is on me. I just go do. Whether it's flowers, whatever I'm gonna do, I spend my day in the garden, and I feel like it's always the thing to do when it's raining, and I'm feeling great, and it just gives me that good feel. So let's also teach our children how to grow vegetables. I mean, this day and age, there are kids still think food comes from the supermarket. They have no idea that you can grow your carrots, you can grow your veggies. So let's reclaim our power right from our own kitchens. It can be done. I'll request Deirdre, Miss Yodit, Miss Paula, please let's have part 2 of this. And it's okay if it's not next Sunday, whenever people are available. But I think this is a conversation we need to keep on having and educate ourselves as we educate others on how we can carry on with this conversation and ensure. Would be nice when we have a conversation, we're showing each other our gardens. It's not just saying, we're doing, igniting that passion in others. Thank you, our listeners. This has been awesome. Thank you, Dr. Gladys. I've seen a lot of your beautiful messages. Cheers, as always, Dr. Marcia. Thank you. And Mr. J, it's been a while since I saw you. Lovely to see you again. Enjoy your Easter holiday. See you next week on Sunday. I'll share the YouTube channel for this platform, and I'll also share a blog post from this conversation. Thank you, and do enjoy the rest of the holiday. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Goodbye, everyone.